The silent night blanketed the deep ravine. Everything seemed calm and untouched in those wild and remote lands. Wildlife followed its natural course. A small animal rested in the grass, unaware of any imminent disturbance. Suddenly, the creature's instinct flared. Something in the atmosphere shifted drastically, forcing it to be alert. Among the ancient trees, an unusual presence began to manifest, breaking the forest's natural darkness. A bizarre plant form awoke from its deep slumber, moving unnaturally for a simple plant. Consciousness abruptly returned to the being. It felt that something was fundamentally wrong with its body at that moment. A pulsing energy took over its senses, blinding the newly awakened mind with an intense light. The protagonist choked violently, feeling a sudden and desperate shortness of breath as it tried to breathe. Upon catching its breath, it looked around in panic. That wild and unfamiliar environment was definitely not home. Its senses swept the forest floor, desperately trying to find any familiar landmark. The silence was broken again. Its attention was diverted by a subtle noise coming from the undergrowth. A small insect buzzed past. Trying to react, it noticed in horror what must be its own limb moving. Absolute terror overwhelmed it. A shrill, endless scream echoed through the forest as the reality of its new form hit. The shock was total upon realizing that its own anatomy had changed, transforming what used to be human into something monstrous. Unable to cope with that absurdity, it decided the only logical solution was to go back to sleep. Hoping to wake from this bizarre nightmare, the strange vegetation remained still in the silent clearing. It seemed peaceful outside, but internally, a human consciousness was collapsing completely. The reality of the situation crashed down on the protagonist with crushing weight. It wasn't having a nightmare. It had, in fact, turned into a tree. The young man desperately searched his memory for the cause of his death. The only clear memory was the harmless act of drinking a glass of water. A wave of shame and disbelief washed over the newly reincarnated soul. Could it be that his life had ended so pathetically, choking on a simple sip? Usually, reincarnation promised godlike powers and harems. Instead, the poor guy bitterly lamented the lack of limbs and the impossibility of even doing sit-ups. Despite the plant biology, he realized with surprise that he possessed a panoramic view. From its dizzying height, the new being surveyed the deep ravine that now served as its prison. It wasn't just the vision that had changed. An unprecedented sense arose, allowing it to perceive the surrounding environment in a way that mixed smell with an expanded tactile sensitivity. The protagonist tried to exert control over its new body, ordering the branches to move. To its despair, only a single vine obeyed the mental command. The rest of the body felt numb, like legs asleep after sitting for too long. Fear arose upon hearing distant howls, realizing its total vulnerability against any predator. Its fertile imagination turned even the local fauna into deadly threats. The simple idea of a woodpecker landing there became the scene of a brutal murder for its woody existence. Suddenly, a familiar mechanical noise cut through the sky and interrupted the panic. The creature's attention immediately fixed on the flying object crossing the clouds. Hope violently rekindled in the protagonist's core. That sighting proved that it was still in the modern world, perhaps in the same era in which it lived before. Its optimistic thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a nearby buzzing. A swarm of insects began to circle, dangerously testing the sentient tree's patience. Driven by pure irritation, it instinctively attacked with its only mobile branch. The blow was quick and precise, eliminating the noisy pests instantly. The irritation gave way to immediate narcissistic pride. The protagonist was amazed and blushed with satisfaction at its own lethality, celebrating the small victory. The system confirmed the kill with a crisp sound in its mind. The protagonist realized that taking lives was not just defense, but a direct source of resources for its evolution. It analyzed its new character sheet carefully. Now identified as Yu Ziyu, the mutant willow understood that both sunlight and hunting would be vital for its growth. An interface appeared before it, demanding an immediate decision. The system offered the chance to spend its newly acquired points to evolve instantly. Yu Ziyu quickly did the math. The passive income from sunlight was safe, but exterminating pests offered a much faster return for its ambitions. As it was immobilized, its offensive options were limited. The willow decided that strengthening its branches was the only viable strategy to interact with the world and protect itself. Without hesitation, it invested everything it had. The mutant ordered the system to channel all available energy to transform its wooden limbs into lethal weapons. A vigorous energy ran through its trunk and limbs. Yu Ziyu felt its physical structure change, becoming more resistant and agile under the command of that mysterious force. The feeling of power intoxicated its mind. The former human could not contain the satisfaction of feeling that it was ceasing to be a helpless plant. The constant fear of being devoured by herbivores disappeared. With this rapid evolution mechanism, it realized that its survival in this wild world was guaranteed. Its attention turned to a nearby target. A beehive hanging just above, previously just part of the landscape, now looked like a banquet of experience points waiting to be harvested. Using the noise of the insects as an excuse for its aggression, the willow attacked. It turned the entire colony into fuel for its own strengthening. Time passed in the isolated valley. For weeks, the routine of absorbing light and eliminating small creatures became the new normal for the conscious tree. The growth was exponential and defied biological logic. Yu Ziyu felt its roots take hold with absurd power, while its branches vibrated with an accumulated supernatural force. To test the limits of his new condition, he sought a greater challenge than insects. A solid rock nearby served as the perfect target for his strength experiment. He focused all his energy on a single point of impact. The branch spun violently and pierced the massive stone as if it were butter, proving its lethality. The attack hit the ground with devastating force, raising dust and debris. Yu Ziyu tested the raw power of his new branches. The mutant tree watched the result in silence. He needed to confirm the exact effectiveness of that blow. To his surprise, the protagonist realized that the wood hadn't even touched the physical target. The mere wind pressure generated by the movement was enough to shatter the rock. Yu Ziyu concluded that he possessed a formidable lethal technique. This advantage would allow him to deceive enemies about his true range. In the following weeks, the reincarnated youth grew at a speed impossible for a common plant. Through his deep roots, he felt the earth's energy being constantly drained to nourish his expanding body. However, the fear of stagnation drove him. Yu Ziyu decided that he needed to absorb resources much faster than any other creature in the forest. Unlike his human life, now he had the advantage of plant vitality. There would be no fatigue or illness to hinder his journey. The system was clear. As long as he accumulated evolution points, his growth would be infinite. The protagonist glimpsed a grand future where he would become a colossal entity, similar to the legendary world tree. Free from the mundane obligations of work and study, Yu Ziyu celebrated the beginning of his solitary ascent towards divinity. The prospect of absolute power and freedom elicited a satisfied laugh from the creature. However, his leafy canopy had attracted unexpected residents. A family of birds had nested among his branches. Days before, when moving some leaves to better capture sunlight, the tree had noticed the presence of the little tenants. Suddenly, something wet hit his face, abruptly interrupting his delusions of grandeur. Yu Ziyu watched the noisy chicks in his branches. He quickly identified the species, realizing that those small creatures would become fierce beasts. The protagonist calculated the potential of those birds. When adults, they would have enough wingspan and strength to dominate the skies. He compared their speed to the beasts of his past life. The conclusion was frightening. The mutations had made this new world much more lethal. A strategy arose in his mind. As an immobile tree, he had no air defense, but taming those creatures could cover this weakness. Memories of his humanity tried to surface, but he pushed them away. There was no going back. He needed to accept his new reality. Yu Ziyu strengthened his resolve. No matter how dangerous the environment was, he would do the impossible to ensure his own survival. Meanwhile, the forest revealed its dangers. A lone howl echoed in the night, announcing the presence of a predator on top of a rock. A pack of tempest wolves devoured a carcass violently. The brutality of that ecosystem did not forgive the weak. Danger was everywhere. Swarms of giant ants marched across the ground, proving that even insects had become monsters. In the shadows, a spider queen waited patiently. Every corner of that forest hid a deadly threat ready to attack. Even the smaller fauna seemed different. A squirrel accumulated resources, taking advantage of the abundant energy that permeated the vegetation. A primate fed peacefully, unaware that something swift cut through the air nearby. The vegetation was suddenly torn apart. The ground and trees were marked by the violent passage of an unstoppable force. A colossal snake slithered through the woods. Its movement was so fast and aggressive that the forest itself bowed before it. The creature followed its destructive path, leaving a clear trail of power. In that world, moving meant altering the landscape. A whip of wood cut through the silent air of the forest with lethal speed. The attack was precise, intercepting the small prey before it could escape. The system promptly notified Yu Ziyu about the death of the rabbit and the reward acquired. The protagonist reflected on how that was his first real hunt in a long time. Instead of absorbing the prey, he decided to use the carcass to feed his winged tenants. The pup's savage hunger took over as they tore apart the offered meat. However, the brutality of the scene made Yu Ziyu's metaphorical stomach churn with disgust. The discomfort passed quickly as he celebrated earning a full evolution point. Now he needed to strategize. Strengthen the roots or the main trunk? The tree was stunned to notice the massive cost disparity to evolve its roots. The prospect of gaining mobility made him laugh internally, dreaming of freedom. Determined to change his fate, Yu Ziyu confirmed the selection in the system with enthusiasm. But the evolution took its toll immediately, sending shockwaves that terrified the nest. He endured the process as the change reshaped his foundation in the depths of the soil. The sensation was torturous, as if an electric drill relentlessly pierced his very essence. Yu Ziyu was impressed by the thickness and strength of his new limbs. The branch now moved with the freedom and lethal power of a giant snake. The protagonist immediately understood the true value of that strange system. This was concrete and frightening proof of what evolution points could achieve in his biology. Since both the roots and branches responded to his command, the tree decided to test its limits. He needed to know if he could, in fact, uproot himself and walk. With immense effort, Yu Ziyu tried to lift his base from the compacted earth. The soil resisted his will, making the movement incredibly heavy. The youth persisted, applying all his newfound strength to break the natural fixation of his plant body. He was determined to break free. However, a sudden and excruciating agony ran through his entire being. The sensory shock was so intense that he almost lost consciousness right there. Yu Ziyu felt as if his very essence was being torn in half. Existence as a mutant plant seemed to be an endless sequence of bizarre suffering. The pain was visceral, surpassing any physical torture he could imagine in his previous life. The protagonist shuddered, feeling the torment vibrate to the depths of his soul. Instinctively, he tried to strengthen the roots to protect the main trunk. The youth realized that this central part was vital, pulsing vulnerably like an exposed heart. He knew he possessed immense power, but his control was still precarious. Yu Ziyu needed to master that strength before it destroyed him. Deciding that it was not yet time to expose himself to such risk, the protagonist violently buried his roots again. It was better to hide that mobility capability for now. The calm returned, but brought a bitter realization to the tree. The experiment had consumed all of his resources, requiring him to urgently seek more evolution points. Suddenly, a noise from the bushes interrupted his strategic thoughts. Something was moving quickly through the undergrowth. Yu Ziyu went into immediate alert, preparing his branches for a possible confrontation. He demanded to know who dared invade his territory at this moment of weakness. To his surprise, a red fox emerged from the leaves. The animal, however, did not attack. It seemed exhausted and simply collapsed before the protagonist. Yu Ziyu was completely taken by surprise by the sudden appearance of that creature in his territory. The small animal couldn't withstand the serious injuries and collapsed on the grass, exhausted and vulnerable. The willow watched attentively, realizing that the fox had lost consciousness soon after arriving in his domain. Upon analyzing the inert body, the protagonist noticed clear signs of poisoning. A cruel choice arose. He could absorb it to gain evolution points immediately. However, an epiphany struck his mind. There was a way to use that situation to restore his own strength more intelligently. Instead of consuming the fox's life, Yu Ziyu decided that it would be more advantageous to help it purge the deadly toxin. The tree's spirit focused its vital energy, focused on executing a plan that it considered brilliant. He distilled his own essence into a healing fluid. The goal was to save the creature to, who knows, obtain greater benefits in the future than a simple meal. The precious fluid of life dripped gently onto the body of the sleeping animal, charged with regenerative power. Yu Ziyu waited anxiously, hoping that his essence would be potent enough to reverse the damage caused by the poison. The effect was miraculous. The red fox not only woke up, but stood up with renewed vigor, completely healed. Before the protagonist could react, there was a sudden and swift movement in his direction. But it wasn't an attack. The creature's eyes shone with a newly awakened intelligence and deep gratitude. To Yu Ziyu's total astonishment, the fox rubbed affectionately against his trunk, acting like a loyal pet. The affectionate and unexpected gesture left the former human disconcerted, unsure how to deal with such adoration. The small animal showed its gratitude by rubbing against the trunk, seeking immediate physical contact with the one who saved it. Yu Ziyu, however, felt disconcerted by that sudden and intense display of intimacy. The sentient tree wasn't used to such affection, and hesitated and sought to immediately identify the new power level of the creature before him. To have a basis for comparison and understand his own hierarchy of strength, he decided to consult his internal attributes. The revealed data confirmed his suspicions about his current progress and ability as an advanced-level mutant willow. Yu Ziyu concluded that his vital sap not only healed, but accelerated the evolution of others, although he still maintained the upper hand in brute strength. That discovery opened up a new range of strategic possibilities, allowing him to glimpse divine levels of power for the future. Returning to reality, he questioned the fox about the origin of its previous injuries, suspecting that human greed was the cause. The willow analyzed the scar on the fox. That old wound wasn't accidental. It was the unmistakable mark of a hunting arrow. The revelation brought immediate terror to the protagonist. If there were arrows, it meant that humans were lurking in the area. Yu Ziyu panicked. If discovered, he would be classified as a demonic aberration and destroyed by modern weapons before he could react. Immediately, the tree withdrew its bright aura and immobilized its branches. He needed to camouflage himself and look like a common, harmless plant. Voices echoed through the woods, confirming his fears. Someone was quickly approaching his location. To his surprise, they weren't soldiers. Two young women walked along the path carrying supplies, unaware of the supernatural presence observing them. The protagonist maintained his disguise, tense. Even unarmed civilians could reveal his existence to the outside world. He suppressed any sign of spiritual energy. It was vital to enter a state of absolute stealth to ensure his survival. Paranoia took over his mind. Did they know his secret? And had they come specifically to confront him? The girls suddenly ran towards the trunk, shouting for father. The willow stood still, stunned by that approach. Yu Ziyu's confusion only increased. He certainly had no kinship whatsoever with those humans. The mutant being waited, perplexed, trying to understand what was about to happen beneath his branches. The mystery was solved when they arranged offerings. An improvised altar with incense and fruits was set up on his roots. The sisters closed their eyes and prayed with devotion. The place was, in fact, a family tomb that they visited to pay their respects. The willow felt a mixture of relief and embarrassment. There was a corpse buried down there, which explained the strange source of nutrients he had felt earlier. A silent predator watched from the shadows, awaiting the right moment. Meanwhile, oblivious to the danger, the two sisters paid their solemn respects before the willow. The reverence, however, was short-lived. The younger sister soon lost patience, complaining about the delay and invoking her father's memory to justify her restlessness. The older one didn't tolerate the disrespect. Firmly, she reprimanded the younger one for thinking about food at that sacred moment and ordered them to leave immediately. Ignoring the childish protests, the young woman dragged her sister away. The protagonist remained still, just waiting for that untimely visit to end. As soon as he felt the human presence diminish, Yu Ziyu abandoned his disguise. The willow opened his eyes slowly, relieved not to have been discovered. However, the peace was brief. To his despair, the girls didn't leave. They decided to bathe in the nearby stream, prolonging the invasion of his territory. Laughter and play echoed through the night forest. The carefree joy of the young women contrasted brutally with the nervous tension that the protagonist felt. Yu Ziyu was consumed by overwhelming frustration. He cursed his own static condition, furious that he could do nothing but watch. That anger, however, ignited a spark of determination. The willow decided that he would not passively accept his immobility and attempted something unthinkable. Concentrating all his spiritual energy, he ordered his body to obey. The goal was simple, but impossible for a plant: to stand up. The effort was monumental, every fiber of his plant being screamed under the pressure, in a titanic struggle against the laws of nature that bound him to the ground. But reality was cruel. The protagonist realized with bitter disappointment that his will was not enough to uproot his new physical form. The forest remained silent, indifferent to his failure. The attempt to walk resulted only in exhaustion and confirmation of his imprisonment. Nearby, the fox continued its deep sleep. The small creature rested peacefully, without imagining the existential crisis that its master had just faced. Yu Ziyu wished they would leave forever. Their safety depended on keeping their distance from that dangerous place. However, one of the young women stopped suddenly. She seemed to have remembered something important before leaving. Ignoring the tree's silent warning, they said goodbye with a smile. They promised that this would not be their last meeting. The protagonist felt a strange mix of shame and warmth. Human kindness still affected him, even in his monstrous form. A week passed without new incidents. However, the calm of the canyon was just a facade for the savage violence that was about to erupt. The silence of the forest was suddenly broken. A sharp cry from the heavens announced the start of the hunt. From above, a rain of lethal energy descended upon the woods. It was not a common attack, but a demonstration of overwhelming power. The projectiles bombarded the ground, forcing a red fox to run for its life. The prey desperately tried to escape the aerial aim. The predator revealed itself, coldly analyzing the target. It was a golden eagle, but its eyes indicated that it had transcended its common animal nature. With a war cry, the winged beast announced its supremacy over the territory. It had no intention of letting its meal escape. The eagle dove with terrifying speed. In an instant, it intercepted the firefox's escape route. Cornered, the fox reacted with ferocity. It sank its fangs into the attacker's body in a last, desperate attempt to survive. The two beasts grappled in a deadly dance. They plummeted towards the ground while exchanging brutal blows in the air. However, the bird's physical strength prevailed. Its powerful claws closed mercilessly on the prey's body, crushing any resistance. The impact against the earth sealed the fox's fate. The eagle stood firm, triumphant, and relentless over its dominated victim. The eagle realized too late that the hunt had become a deadly trap. Yu Ziyu did not hesitate, launching his roots upwards and intercepting the predator before it could escape. The constriction was brutal. The overwhelming force of the vines instantly immobilized the creature, sealing its fate. With the threat's life extinguished, the system promptly confirmed the victory and awarded the evolution points for the kill. The willow turned its attention to its allies. The hawks had played a crucial role in attracting the enemy. The red fox also stood firm, demonstrating the unwavering loyalty it had maintained since being rescued. Yu Ziyu felt great relief. That predator had been circling him for days, waiting for a moment of weakness, but had finally been eliminated. However, the victory brought an immediate concern. He realized that his uncontrolled spiritual aura was acting as a beacon for monsters. The danger was real. If an even more powerful creature had appeared in place of the eagle, the outcome would have been catastrophic. The fear of death ignited a new determination in his core. Survival demanded absolute power. He knew he couldn't afford to be careless. The world was full of beasts capable of destroying him with a single blow, and this need for strength did not apply only to him. His subordinates also needed to evolve in order to survive. The hawks rested on the branches, blindly trusting in the protection that the willow offered. Analyzing the growth potential of his companions, Yu Ziyu felt a pang of anxiety to see them level up. Determined to accelerate this process, he began to distribute the vital essence from the recent battle to strengthen his small army. The dust from the impact began to settle, revealing the trail of destruction left by the surprise attack. The system sounded an urgent alarm. Yu Ziyu realized that his roots and branches had suffered severe structural damage. The enemy finally emerged from the mist. A gigantic snake watched him, ready for its next strike. The protagonist calculated the damage with despair. Dozens of his limbs were instantly severed. His offensive capability was halved. Now, few resources remained to ensure his survival. He cursed himself internally. The arrogance after the victory against the eagle made him lower his guard at the worst possible moment. That predator was cunning. Yu Ziyu understood that the creature waited patiently for the perfect opportunity to strike. Needing information to survive, the willow ordered the control interface to analyze the opponent. The result was terrifying. It was a warblade serpent, a level 9 beast and a natural nemesis of plants. The situation was critical. Fate had placed before him the worst possible enemy, capable of cutting any wood like paper. Realizing the imminent danger, the red fox placed itself between the master and the beast, growling in defiance. However, the serpent only viewed the small fox as an easy appetizer before the main course. With a quick and brutal movement, the reptile ignored the fox's defense and advanced against the main trunk. The powerful fangs closed, crushing the wood and penetrating Yu Ziyu's defenses with frightening ease. The shock of the impact reverberated through his consciousness. He would need all his focus to not be devoured right there. The enormous serpent opened its mouth, ready to deliver another devastating attack against the immobile tree. However, the predator stopped abruptly. Something in his prey's aura had changed, alerting its primal instincts. Yu Ziyu acted fast. The willow invested his precious evolution points, focusing everything on the immediate improvement of his roots. The beast recoiled, shocked. It realized too late that the approaching blow carried a power far superior to the previous one. The protagonist was not intimidated. In close combat, he was determined to prove that he was not an easy prey. Yu Ziyu's determination reached its peak. He channeled all his energy, ordering the simultaneous strengthening of all his underground extensions. The ground trembled as the evolved roots erupted, turning the battlefield into a deadly wooden trap. The willow attacked with ferocity. He swore to himself that he would fight for this new life until the last second. With a violent movement, Yu Ziyu lashed the air, making it clear that this canyon was now his inviolable territory. The serpent hissed in agony and frustration. Feeling the overwhelming pressure turn the tide of the battle against it. However, the attack met resistance. The roots struck the creature's belly with force, but the hard scales prevented total penetration. The monster panicked upon realizing the real danger. Those wooden claws were sharp enough to dismember it if a blow connected perfectly. The cunning beast, however, did not flee. Its eyes gleamed with malice as it analyzed the bloody situation. The serpent prepared itself, focusing all its murderous attention on a single vulnerable point. With explosive speed, the predator ignored the roots and launched itself in a direct attack against the main trunk. The colossal serpent was hurled away with incalculable violence. The impact of the counterattack launched it toward the horizon. The creature retreated, disappearing into the clouds and leaving the battlefield behind. The immediate danger had passed. Yu Ziyu remained on the spot, vibrating with the residual energy of the confrontation. His roots still pulsed after the monumental effort. The protagonist cursed internally, feeling the deep cracks in his core. The battle almost cost him his life right there. The dust settled over the silent canyon, revealing the scar left on the earth by the brutal confrontation. The small red fox approached quickly, emitting high-pitched sounds of concern upon seeing its master's deplorable state. Yu Ziyu promptly reassured his loyal companion. He guaranteed that, despite the visible damage, he was still alive and functional. However, his thoughts turned to the distant sky. That formidable enemy that escaped would certainly bring serious problems in the future. Frustration took over him. The protagonist bitterly recognized that this near-death situation occurred only because of his own weakness. The Warblade Serpent had tested his defenses and, without a doubt, would return much stronger and prepared to kill him. He realized that the excessive effort made his core start to crumble, a critical situation. Suddenly, a system alert interrupted his panic. A notification appeared before him. The necessary conditions to evolve to the next rank had finally been achieved. Yu Ziyu's mood instantly changed from worry to exultation. This validated his risky plans to ascend to the next level of power. Determined to overcome any future threat and dominate the forest, he did not hesitate. The confirmation command was activated firmly. An intense energy enveloped his plant body. The evolution process began immediately, promising to transform his existence forever. The battle had ceased, but the forest remained restless. Residual energy swirled around the ancient tree as it began its recovery. Among the branches, the local fauna sought refuge. A fox and a flock of hawks rested there, feeling safe in the presence of that colossal entity. The rest, however, did not last long. Sharpened senses suddenly awoke, alerted by the changes that pulsed within the host. Yu Ziyu stood tall in the canyon. His twisted trunk and vibrant core emanated a renewed power that demanded attention. A holographic interface manifested near the roots. The system updated the status, reflecting the growth obtained after the recent conflict. The protagonist felt a wave of unprecedented vitality. His perception expanded, becoming much sharper and more comprehensive than before. A soft step broke the silence. One of his guardians approached the central trunk with evident reverence. It was the mutant red fox. The creature revealed its true nature, radiating an intense aura that marked it as a level 7 beast. Above them, the hawks became agitated. The birds flapped their wings with vigor, awaiting their master's instructions. The core trembled with intensity. Yu Ziyu understood that this luminescence signaled the peak of his evolutionary transformation. He wasted no time. With a mental command, the monstrous tree ordered the 8 hawks to track down the war scythe serpent. A brief silence followed. The protagonist watched, awaiting his subordinate's immediate reaction to the directive. The birds instantly launched into the sky. The acceleration was so sudden it shocked him. They moved like living projectiles. As they tore through the air, Yu Ziyu calculated the pack's lethality. At that speed, they could easily pierce the skin of any beast of the same rank. The tree's consciousness pulsed with satisfaction. His influence was growing, and he was no longer just a static and vulnerable target. The fox felt the power flow through it, confirming that it had evolved. It clearly perceived the overwhelming energy emanating from its master, and longed to test its new capabilities. However, the peace of the sanctuary was suddenly interrupted. A desperate cry for help tore through the silence of the forest, alerting everyone. 2 young humans ran desperately, wounded and confused. They fled in panic, not understanding why they had become targets. A dark presence watched the chaotic scene. The entity recognized the intruders, dismissing them with disdain as the chase continued. Behind the girls, a veritable tide of wild beasts advanced. The entire forest seemed to have turned against them, with creatures of all species united in a frenzied hunt. As they tried to escape, the fugitives exchanged cries of confusion. None of them knew what had provoked such fury in the local fauna. Death seemed inevitable. The jaws of the beast snapped just inches from reaching them, thirsty for blood. The horde advanced relentlessly, trampling everything in its path. The violence of the attack left no room for any hope of survival. Suddenly, a huge boar broke through the front line. The beast jumped violently, determined to crush the fragile prey once and for all. With nowhere to run, the young women simply screamed in absolute terror. They awaited the fatal impact, certain that this was the end. A violent crash shook the ground, raising a curtain of dust. The imminent attack was brutally intercepted before reaching the humans. Stunned, the girls opened their eyes when they realized they were still alive. Before them, the dust slowly settled, revealing that something had stood in the beast's path. The firefox stood over the body of the defeated boar. With an imposing stance, she demonstrated that this area was under her protection. The humans were paralyzed, shocked by the sight of the mystical creature. The fox, in turn, growled at the horde, ready to defend its territory. Without hesitation, the guardian unleashed her newly acquired power. Beams of devastating energy rained down on the invading beasts, decimating the threat in moments. The young survivors could hardly believe what they were seeing. These mystical creatures had not come to hunt them, but to protect them. The overwhelming presence of the newcomers paralyzed the horde. Instinct screamed for the monsters to retreat before it was too late. However, the firefox was not willing to share the glory. She imperiously ordered the hawks to move away, claiming the massacre for herself. But the master of the forest had other plans. Yu Ziyu decided that he would not just stand by and launched his own extensions into the combat. The murderous intent filled the air. The Willow's goal was not just to drive away the invaders, but to exterminate them completely. The sudden violence of the counterattack was too much for the human mind to process. The shock transformed the momentary relief into pure hysterical terror. The mutant being focused his attention on the mass of enemies. For him, this was not a fight, but a collective death sentence. The roots attacked with a speed that ordinary eyes could not follow. The first beast fell before it even realized the fatal blow. The battlefield turned into absolute chaos. Yu Ziyu swept the area, throwing predators against each other as if they were rag dolls. One of the pack leaders tried to face the threat. However, all he found was the unfathomable abyss of a superior predator. The protagonist decreed the end of the game. There would be no mercy or escape route for those who dared to invade his sanctuary. Panic spread among the remaining beasts. They tried to run desperately, but the earth trembled under the weight of the forest's fury. The massacre brought immediate rewards. Each life reaped converted into pure energy, fueling the willow's continuous evolution through the system. Yu Ziyu observed the efficiency of his own movements with satisfaction. The lethal precision of his roots exceeded any previous expectation. Not even the skies offered safety. The protagonist intercepted the flying creatures mid-flight, ensuring no experience points escaped his grasp. Yu Ziyu continued the relentless slaughter. His roots pierced the beast's thick hides without resistance, instantly reaping lives. Some animals tried to flee in panic, but the willow's reach was inescapable. Every escape route was blocked by a wall of living wood. The branches moved with the speed of vipers, silencing the creatures before they could even howl in pain. However, a strategic thought crossed his mind amidst the slaughter. He realized that total extermination would be wasteful, and considered sparing the strongest. Changing tactics, his roots alternated between killing and capturing. He imprisoned the most promising specimens, immobilizing them to serve his future purposes. As for the rest, there was no hesitation. Yu Ziyu decreed the final purge, deciding to convert the remaining weak into pure evolutionary energy. The valley became a field of annihilation. The willow unleashed its full power, sweeping away the remnants of the horde in a frenzy of controlled violence. Silence finally returned to the canyon. The bodies were hoisted and suspended by the roots, while the threat of the beasts was completely neutralized. With the invasion resolved, the mutant tree turned its attention to a more delicate problem. The immediate danger had passed, but a logistical issue remained. His focus fell on the two unconscious human survivors on the ground. Their presence there posed a significant risk to his secret existence. Paranoia quickly set in. He reasoned that if they disappeared, search teams would come, and armed military forces might eventually invade his sanctuary. His imagination conjured up the worst possible scenarios. He visualized himself being uprooted, captured, and displayed in some botanical garden as a grotesque tourist attraction. Such humiliation was unacceptable, but suddenly, an inspiration struck him. He realized there might be a way to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Just as he formulated his plan, one of the young women began to stir. She awoke dazed, still confused by the chaos that had preceded her fainting. Yu Ziyu wasted no time. He projected himself over them, creating a terrifying presence to ensure the intruder's first reaction was absolute fear. Instead of attacking, the willow moved one of its branches with a different purpose. Yu Ziyu needed to communicate before fear overwhelmed them. The sisters recoiled in panic upon seeing the vegetation come to life. The shock of realizing the plant was sentient momentarily paralyzed them. Ignoring their terror, the protagonist began to scrape the ground with the tip of the branch. He needed to overcome the barrier between species. Thanking his past life, he wrote legible characters in the earth. Yu Ziyu decided to risk an absurd lie. He claimed to be their reincarnated father. The young women stared at the message on the ground, stunned. Confusion replaced fear as they tried to process that impossible claim. Internally, the willow was sweating bullets, hoping their naivety would overcome logic. He appealed to the fact that he had saved them as proof of their kinship. However, he knew he needed more than words written in the earth. If the plan failed, he would have to resort to deep secrets to convince them. Without wasting time, Yu Ziyu activated his system. He needed to extract vital information about the intruders to support his charade. The interface revealed the young woman's identity and her tragic story. He discovered that she had abandoned her studies to support her family. The system also exposed an embarrassing secret about a boy, something she had confided only to her deceased father. It was the perfect proof. Armed with this intimate knowledge, the protagonist felt ready. He rummaged through his abilities in search of the ideal way to present the information. His branches moved delicately, shaping familiar objects. He created replicas of items that would have emotional significance for them. The willow presented the gifts to the stunned sisters. He acted as if the gesture was an involuntary reflex of a loving father. The strategy worked, evoking painful memories of their bedridden father. The similarity in behavior shook Xiao Qing's emotional defenses. Taking advantage of her vulnerability, Yu Ziyu touched her gently. He narrated the sacrifices she made, repeating the truths that the system had shown him. The protagonist decided to grant one last gift before departure. He offered a fraction of his own vital essence to the visitor. The young woman felt the pure energy flow into her. The magnitude of that blessing deeply moved her, bringing her to tears. That mysterious force was the catalyst for change in the entire ecosystem. It was the same power that transformed the beasts of the forest into something superior. She finally understood the nature of that energy. The world debated names for it, but the girl now knew that evolution was real. The news that the young woman saw on television seemed distant before. Now, feeling the power coursing through her veins, any skepticism completely disappeared. The willow, however, felt slightly embarrassed. The human's fervent adoration and intense gratitude left him feeling awkward. Attention soon turned to maintaining the territory. The girl took on the task of feeding the wild beasts that had recently been captured. The wolves attacked the meat with uncontrollable ferocity. The hunger and aggression of the beasts was still a latent threat. Suddenly, an oppressive presence arose behind the human. The danger seemed imminent and silent. A predatory gaze fixed on the scene. The aura of a true hunter emanated from the approaching creature. The wolves, once violent, froze in absolute terror. They instantly recognized the hierarchy of power and who the real predator was there. The firefox imposed its authority without needing to attack. The young woman was amazed to see her guardian dominate the pack with just its presence. Yu Ziyu watched the interaction with approval. He knew that, under the watchful eye of his first ally, the prisoners would not dare to rebel. The willow also kept other creatures under strict control. A heron and a noisy primate were suspended, completely immobilized by its branches. Only the mutant bull demonstrated true wisdom. The colossal beast realized the futility of resisting and chose peaceful submission to survive. The willow captured an unexpected intruder. Yu Ziyu noticed that this aggressive species did not belong to the usual local fauna. He decided to put the prisoner aside for now. There were more urgent tasks to complete before deciding the fate of the invaders. Yu Ziyu accessed his mental interface. He needed to check how many evolution points he had accumulated after the recent events. The protagonist reviewed his current capabilities. Besides the brute strength of his branches, his vital essence remained his most precious resource. A pulse of energy ran through his core. He felt that he was about to unlock a new level of power. Yu Ziyu realized that his evolution had not stagnated. The system indicated that his basic abilities could still be improved. The options shone before him. Both his roots and his branches possessed latent potential to be improved immediately. The desire to become stronger spoke louder. He decided to invest his resources to raise his power level right now. New tactical abilities were revealed. He could now manipulate the environment with dense fog and cause hallucinogenic effects on intruders. The protagonist celebrated the strategic acquisition. Controlling the perception of enemies would be fundamental to ensuring his unbridled and safe growth. Eager to test the new defense, Yu Ziyu focused his spiritual energy and activated the newly acquired ability. The atmosphere of the forest began to change instantly. Waves of energy dispersed, altering the environment around the willow. A thick mist arose from nowhere, engulfing the vegetation and concealing the monstrous form of the mutant tree. The entire valley was covered by the white cloak. Yu Ziyu was surprised by the effectiveness of the camouflage that now protected his territory. Feeling more powerful, he desired revenge against the giant snake. However, he restrained his impulse, aware that attracting unwanted attention could be fatal. Yu Ziyu observed the unfolding situation, aware that this moment would define the future of the visitors. The girls, still shaken, cried for the supposed loss of their father amidst the chaos of the forest. The willow coldly analyzed the situation, noting that the effectiveness of his mental influence increased dramatically with physical proximity. Realizing nightfall was coming, he telepathically ordered the firefox to take them away from that dangerous territory. Yu Ziyu imposed a final mental warning on the sisters. alerting them to the risk of becoming laboratory guinea pigs if they revealed what they saw. The flaming beast promptly obeyed, darting through the trees with the humans on its back. The younger girl, however, exchanged fear for euphoria, marveling at the succession of fantastic events of that day. Her sister, on the other hand, remained thoughtful, unable to forget the mysterious voice that seemed to emanate from the mountain itself. Fulfilling its mission, the fox expressed a silent and loyal gratitude to its master. With the intruders out of the way, the protagonist resumed his main goal, reaching the second stage of his evolution. Without hesitation, he consumed his accumulated points, focusing on the structural fortification of his mutant roots. A wave of energy ran through the willow's body, transforming its underground foundation into something even more robust. Yu Ziyu felt the power flow, understanding that all his capabilities were being elevated to a new level. While the process was occurring, his perception turned to the wooden structure he kept isolated. Inside, the captured black wolf remained vigilant, awaiting the judgment of the entity that now dominated the valley. The captive wolf raised its head, its eyes gleaming with an intense mix of defiance and caution in the face of the situation. Without warning, the beast let out a piercing howl that echoed through the ravine, trying to assert itself or perhaps call for help. Yu Ziyu observed the scene with some disdain. While his mist made most creatures lose their sense of reality, that specific animal just seemed noisy. Around them, the psychedelic gases effect was chaotic. Other animals ran disoriented through the terrain, chasing enemies that existed only in their minds. The protagonist seized the moment to review his attributes. He noticed that his mist and root abilities had leveled up, unlocking new power descriptions. However, frustration soon arose when calculating his resources. He realized that the amount of evolution points remaining was insufficient to enhance his natural talent now. His attention then turned to the depths of the soil. The roots pulsed vigorously, connected to an underground energy source. The mutant willow understood the true magnitude of its location. It was rooted above what could be considered a true river of spiritual energy. Yu Ziyu decided he needed to keep the wild creatures contained there. If they escaped at that moment, they could reach the humans who had just left. Suddenly, a familiar sound of flapping wings cut through the air. The protagonist realized that the former inhabitants of his canopy had returned. The bird of prey let out a sharp cry as it approached, demonstrating a vitality that seemed to have increased since the last time. The willow focused its perception on the newly arrived animal. He sensed a subtle change in the creature's aura. Yu Ziyu found that the bird was carrying injuries. Apparently, the shockwave from his last attack had inadvertently hit the small animal. However, the hawk landed quietly on the branch. The attraction to the pure life energy that the tree emanated was irresistible, overcoming any fear or instinct to flee. At the base of the tree, the wolf pack reacted to the movement. They snarled and barked in unison, agitated by the concentration of power in the presence of the birds. Yu Ziyu attentively watched the movement around him, his expanded consciousness focused on the reactions of those present. The young girl, however, was not satisfied. She scolded her adoptive father loudly, indignant that he was intimidating the newly arrived wolves for no apparent reason. Determined to prevent the injustice, she leaned against the gigantic roots, watching what was happening in the depths of the mist. The captured beast groaned under the crushing pressure, unable to move or react to the willow's strength. Upon noticing the creature's genuine suffering, the girl's expression changed from anger to deep concern. The wolf, exhausted and subdued, simply kept its gaze fixed, awaiting its fate in the clutches of that plant entity. Yu Ziyu, noticing the girl's insistence, realized he needed to ease the tension before the situation worsened. Suddenly, chaos broke out for another reason. A daring honey badger tried to steal the dried meat intended for the willow, forcing the young girl to intervene physically. The little thief's escape, however, was short-lived. Yu Ziyu's roots reacted instantly to the disturbance, intercepting the creature in the air. The badger was immediately immobilized and hung from a high branch, swinging helplessly next to a beehive as punishment. The animal, realizing that aggression was useless against those bonds, surrendered with a comical expression, which amused the human. The hostility soon turned into affection. She offered a piece of food to the prisoner, gaining the little glutton's trust. Not wanting to leave anyone out, the young girl turned to the large black bull waiting, offering it fresh apples as a sign of peace. The tense atmosphere of the forest finally dissipated. Under the willow's protection, the girl fed the beast, creating a moment of improbable harmony. The young girl caressed the wild beast with surprising calm. That affectionate interaction defied the violent nature of the wolves the protagonist knew, revealing an unexpected bond. Yu Ziyu watched the scene, dumbfounded. The impossible harmony between humans and those dangerous beasts was something his consciousness had never foreseen. He reflected on how humanity, in ancient times, survived by domesticating nature. Witnessing that rare talent, the willow realized he might have accidentally found something valuable in those young girls. Since his awakening in that strange and hostile world, tension had been his only constant companion. Fear and vigilance had never left him until that moment. However, in the face of that demonstration of trust, he allowed himself a brief moment of truce. It was necessary to lower his guard and relax, even if only for a brief instant. Far from the deep forest, life in the human village continued its course under the daylight, oblivious to the mysteries and creatures that inhabited the shadows of the ravine. The two sisters ran with youthful enthusiasm, ignoring any protocol as they left the safety of the houses behind, driven by a joyful urgency. The grandfather tried to warn them about the imminent dangers of the mountain, but the girls' confidence was unwavering. They assured the elder that there was nothing to fear in that direction. Watching them leave, the men commented with relief about the return of their joy. The mourning for their father's death had silenced those laughs in the family for too long. The old man's concern persisted only because of the dangerous destination they had chosen. Meanwhile, at the top of the mountain, the protagonist's peace was abruptly interrupted by an unexpected collision. The girls arrived at the mystical tree's domain, anxiously scouring the area. They ignored the willow's presence as they called out for their missing animal companion. Yu Ziyu felt the impact of that noisy search on his roots and branches. His attempt to rest had been completely thwarted by the invasive commotion of the visitors. Not far away, the fox awoke from its stupor. Its keen senses immediately picked up the familiar call echoing through the forest. The reunion was immediate and warm. The sisters enveloped the large beast in a hug, celebrating the fact that it had come to find them personally. With supernatural agility, the creature launched itself into the air, carrying both on its back. Together, they defied gravity as they dove swiftly through the ravine. The younger girl wore a mischievous smile, proud of her idea. The sister, however, seemed skeptical and apprehensive about the plan. When the package was revealed, an unbearable odor infested the air. The young girl immediately covered her nose, nauseated by the strong smell emanating from it. The girl laughed, convinced that her father would devour it without complaint. However, the light conversation was interrupted when a shadow covered the area. She raised her face to the sky, confused by the sudden change. What appeared to be a storm was rapidly forming above them. They weren't rain clouds, but something alive. A colossal serpent emerged from the darkness, descending from the heavens with terrifying pressure on the forest. The red fox, ever alert, sensed the mortal danger instantly. Its primal instinct screamed at the presence of the ultimate predator. Terror froze the two sisters where they stood. They realized, too late, that they had become prey to something monstrous. The giant beast attacked without warning. In panic, the older sister screamed desperately, ordering Xiaoqing to run to save her own life. Blood spurted violently. A scream of horror echoed as they saw who had stood in the way of the fatal blow. The small animal was thrown brutally by the force of the impact. The red fox had sacrificed itself to intercept the snake's attack. The chaos awakened other threats in the ravine. A swarm of giant wasps, agitated by the commotion, plummeted from the sky towards the ground. One of the monstrous insects prepared to attack, buzzing furiously. The situation had gone from critical to desperate in seconds. Suddenly, a crimson blur cut through the air. Something moved with impressive speed to intercept the new threat before it was too late. The impact was devastating and precise. The mysterious force collided against the giant wasp, violently crushing the insect in the air. But the battle was just beginning. A claw shrouded in dark energy emerged to retaliate, colliding against the defender with destructive power. Yu Ziyu turned to his fallen prey. He revealed that luring them there had been a calculated move to fuel his own growth. The swarm of wasps stood no chance. In moments, they were decimated, becoming nothing more than resources for the mutant tree. With the threat eliminated, the willow felt a wave of satisfaction. The system confirmed his reward, granting him a substantial amount of evolution points. He turned his attention to the small creatures watching him. The entity expressed his gratitude, acknowledging that their presence had been useful. As a gesture of benevolence, Yu Ziyu offered a gift. He distilled a drop of his own vital essence, granting it to the nearby birds. But charity was secondary to survival. The protagonist focused on his internal interface, realizing that he finally had enough points to strengthen his foundation. The decision was made instantly. He needed to become stronger to secure his dominance in that wild ravine. Without hesitation, Yu Ziyu confirmed the upgrade. It was time to evolve his roots to the next level. A wave of raw power exploded from within him. The ground trembled violently as his underground network expanded and hardened, cracking the very earth. The sudden earthquake terrified the local fauna. A nearby yak froze, crushed by the sheer pressure radiating from the willow. The pack of wolves, usually the hunters, now stared in shock. They felt a terrifying shift in the forest's hierarchy. Even the badger, trapped in the vines, lost its usual aggression. The creature could only watch in horror as its captor transformed. The intensity of the evolution took its toll. Yu Ziyu gasped heavily, his consciousness struggling to adapt to the sudden influx of energy. As the sensation stabilized, understanding dawned on him. The improvement had exceeded his wildest expectations, elevating his existence to a new level. Confidence coursed through his wooden veins. The protagonist felt invincible, certain that he could now face even the most formidable beasts of the canyon. Yu Ziyu focused his perception, focusing on the vital energy emanating from the surrounding forest. In an instant, he launched his roots like spears, traversing the distance that separated him from his targets. The force of the impact shook the ground, catching the local fauna completely off guard. One of the beasts tried to flee, but was quickly ensnared and lifted off the ground without any chance of defense. Chaos reigned in the woods as multiple targets were simultaneously neutralized by the surprise attack. Satisfied, the willow began to retract its vines, dragging the catches back to the base of its trunk. However, something amidst that display of power made the protagonist ponder for a brief moment. The doubt soon gave way to euphoria. He internally celebrated the abundance of that hunt, deeming it an exceptional harvest. The influx of evolution points brought a joy comparable to winning the lottery. Yu Ziyu felt ready to face his next great challenge. His new sensory perception expanded like radar, ensuring that no danger could approach unnoticed. A badger, known for its ferocity, struggled uselessly against the bonds that held it ever tighter. The primate, watching from a safe branch, understood with horror the fate that awaited the captured creature. Brought closer to the main consciousness, the animal faced its predator, awaiting the final moment of absorption. Far from there, the gigantic armored serpent, wounded and bleeding, waited impatiently for reinforcements that were slow to arrive.